So really, like, Brianna, you mentioned this idea of working backwards. We think about that a lot. How do we take the goal and work backwards? And then how do we educate the business around what that looks like and what we're going to need from them and what roadblocks we might be seeing based on what data we're seeing come in. So there's just been a lot of advancements around data storytelling. And I think that's what it comes down to, because you can put a bunch of numbers on the screen or on, you can say them in a meeting, but if you're not telling the story or the narrative behind the data, I think that's a big miss, and you're not going to be getting as compelling of results as you would if you put the story behind it.
Okay, so did you train yourself to put a story behind the data? Did someone else train you? How'd you do that?
Yeah, I think just over the course of time, you kind of realize the effectiveness of it. And I kind of put myself in someone else's shoes, right? Like, I'm not an engineer and I'm not a product person and I'm not analyst or whatever. And so if someone was going to present their information to me and just say, hey, here's the, this, and this, I'd be really confused. But if they're able to tell me a story, it's like going back to being a kid again. You can listen to a story, you can understand a story, and you can get buy-in that way. And so for me, I think that's really important, is what is the story that you're telling and how does the data sort of support that and help you to achieve that goal?
Yeah. So think about like younger in their careers, recruiters. How do they start to tell that story? Like, would you role play that with them in order to have hard meetings and conversations with hiring managers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all about just understanding basic metrics. So think, what is your conversion rate from recruiter phone screen to hiring manager screen? If your number is really low, let's say you're doing way too many screens, then you're moving forward. Well, then maybe you don't have a great understanding of the profile. Maybe there's some calibration that needs to happen there. The next phase of that is, what's the pass-through rate from hiring manager screen to round one or whatever your next stage in your process is? Again, if we're seeing a low conversion rate there, then that tells me that there might be disconnect, and it might not be a recruiter disconnect. It might be a hiring manager disconnect. So it's really learning how to ask questions. I think as I continue on in my career, one of the biggest things that I've learned is that asking probing questions is the absolute best thing that you can do versus telling somebody, because when you're asking them questions, you're getting them to actually tell you. And so for me, I think asking questions is key.
Power of the question. So Brittany, what would you say is maybe like the top 3 questions that you would ask in order to gauge that?
Yeah, Amy was actually tickling a lot of things in my brain.
I think we're vibing on it.
I'm like, yes. So actually a few years ago at our talent acquisition offsite that we host, we do like 2 a year for the TA team. We'll have people on the team do presentations, interactive sessions, really look in-house at our experts to teach the team certain things. For me, I'm a naturally curious person. Like early in my days here at Duolingo, I was like always asking why, even if it was like, you're recruiter 1, you just started, why are you asking so many whys? But that was sort of also like embedded, like it really was encouraged at the same time where it's like, okay, maybe don't ask why right now, we'll ask why later. But so for me with the team at this offsite is I did a whole presentation on like getting to the why behind things. And actually, whenever you're talking about being like childlike in things, I said at one point, whenever I was doing the interactive piece, I'm going to be acting like your annoying little sister. I'm going to keep asking why. Like, well, the offer accept rate is this. I'm like, why? Well, because people aren't accepting. Why? Well, because of compensation. Why? Like, keep getting that piece. But I think when you look at it at a really high level, when you're like coaching your team on how to do this, it is doing it in the moment, right? Of like, if I get a message of like, whatever question it is, I will keep asking why. And then they like realize what game I'm playing with them. But it's like doing that, but then also coaching at the high level of like, we do retrospectives for all of our roles. Every time, it's like a couple of roles close or we end a university recruiting season, we'll do these like really high in-depth, like multi-page retros that we share with executive leadership that they look forward to every time that it's, retrospective time. And every piece of it is the recruiter digging into the why for specific pieces. So, and it's like aligning to what leadership's goals are, to what your own goals are as a recruiting team, and then finding that in between as well, right? Of telling that story, because that's how you can tell the most compelling stories if you know the why and you can bring that high level data, that singular piece of data into that story you're telling.